I was a single mom at 30 to a beautiful baby boy, and I moved after the first 2 months into an apartment from my parents' house. I was so excited to finally have my own space again. I became pregnant expectantly after returning home from a trip where I was working overseas and decided to stay in Canada rather than continue on with my plans to go overseas. My new apartment was a great fit for us, and we had no issues the first month or so. A short while into the second month, I started getting a weird feeling that I was being watched, but I was also sleep deprived and exhausted, so I just wrote it off to being tired. One day I was in my room with the baby monitor folding laundry, while my kiddo slept in his room down the hallway. I heard him interacting and giggling, and then I heard a little girl laughing and singing to him. I got up and went to his room, and he was happy and awake and alone. So a bit strange, I just thought. Maybe I was hearing things. This happened again about 2 weeks later, but this time instead of a girl, I heard a man's voice talking to him on the baby monitor and him crying. I ran in there quickly and again looked around. He was easily comforted after a snuggle, but the little hairs were rising up on the back of my neck. Later on, about a few weeks to a month, I had gotten up in the night to feed my son. I would leave the room in darkness as I'm easily up and can't return to sleep if I have too many lights on. My room had no overhead lights, and only a lamp by the window on the other side of the room from my side of the bed and one on my bedside table. I never turned on the light when I would leave the room so I could hopefully return to go back to sleep. After feeding my son and putting him down, I returned to my room and found the lamp over by the window turned on, and I was terrified. I grabbed a heavy bookend and ran around the house ready to attack the intruder with it, but there was no one in the home. That lamp is hard to turn on, as its rotating switch probably needs some WD-40. I never turn it on unless I'm working in that area. I went back to bed scared, trying to figure out how that light went on. It's not attached to the light switch in the room. A short while later, I went off for a midnight feed with my son, and I returned to find a picture in a frame. Its original location hung over on the other side of the room by the window, but now it was on the floor near the side of the bed that I climb into, next to my bedside table and closest to the door. I looked, and there was no way for this item to end up where it was without someone lifting it off the wall hook and placing it there. The wall hook was still there, so the picture couldn't have just broken off the wall and fallen to the floor. Again, another night of anxiety as I tried to figure out what was going on. My mom had a key to my place, but no one else had access, and they lived 40 minutes away from my apartment. This kept happening around 2 to 4 a.m. every night. At this point, I started questioning my sanity and also wondering if I was haunted. I didn't tell anyone yet because I didn't want anyone to think I was losing my mind. I continued to feel like I was being watched, and sometimes it was a very overwhelming feeling, other times it wasn't so bad. One night I went to take a shower after getting the baby down for a sleep. I went into the shower and was soaping up when the shower curtain started moving and the room filled with cold air. I was suddenly very aware of the fact that I was not alone and that I was naked and very afraid. I tried to pretend I didn't notice anything and I rinsed off and left the shower very quickly. I went to my bed and pulled up the covers and kept telling myself that didn't just happen. This was about 8:30 or 9 p.m. at night, and I started to try and read a book. I was reading for about 20 minutes and then I noticed that the room became very cold. Suddenly the pillow next to me on the bed compressed, and it looked like someone invisible had laid their head down. That was it for me. I didn't need anyone else to tell me that my house was haunted. It was terrifying. I left my room, grabbed the baby, the carrier, and the keys, and I think I threw on some boots and a jacket. I even left my purse in the house. It was winter and it was mild, but not the weather that you run out to in a nightgown. I drove to my parents and woke my mom up and told her what happened, and I told her I wasn't going back to that apartment. My mom is a spiritualist and attended a church where the reverend was a medium. Her name was Anne, and my mom said she could likely help me. She gave me the phone number and I called the next day. When I called her, I was so awkward and said something like, I have a ghost and I think I need some help. Anne said back, actually, you have 3. There's an old woman who sits in the corner and doesn't speak, a little girl who is quite young, and a young man. I am concerned about the young man. I was not a spiritualist at that time, and wasn't 100% sold on ghosts, although I had seen and heard things I couldn't explain in the past. But what she had said about the little girl was backed up by the voice I had heard on the baby monitor, and I decided to trust her as I needed help. We arranged for her to come the next day with another medium and clear the man out. Before you ask, I had never mentioned this to my mom until that night when I came to her house, and I called Anne first thing the next day. My mom had not advised her about anything. Anne knew on the phone exactly what was going on, without me even being at home or her being present in the space. She asked me if I wanted to stay in the house while she did it, or go out. I said I wanted to stay, but not in the same room. I left the baby at my parents' and went home to the house, and was immediately uncomfortable, like I was being watched. Anne arrived with her friend and they walked through the house. I stayed in my room and suddenly I felt happier, like something had shifted. I walked into the living room and the Reverend told me what had happened. She said that the spirit that was there was a young man who died young, before he got to have a family of his own. When he noticed me alone with a baby, he started to play house with us, pretending we were his family. She explained to him that he needed to leave and was unwanted. He left with no argument, and she said as I was living in an apartment many people have lived in before, there was a higher likelihood of different energies coming into my space. She suggested salt rock lamps throughout my house, which I still have and use, and to ask for protection when I sleep, visualizing a blanket or a sleeping bag of white light to surround me. I'd never had another ghostly home invader that was not welcome, and it was the first time I knew for certain that ghosts were real, and that they had their own motivations for doing things. I look back now, and I'm no longer afraid of spirits except demonic things, and I ensure I steer clear of anything that would promote anything unnatural, like a Ouija board. My son is 16 now, and doesn't remember any of this, but it is burned in my memory as one of the scariest times in my life. When I hear other people's ghost stories, I do feel for them, as it brings me back to this time when I felt so at a loss of control. To anticipate this being asked, the Reverend did not ask for anything in return for cleansing my house, although later I found out my mom made a small donation in my name to the church. The church was run as a non-profit, and the mediums taught and did clearing for no profit and only to help and educate. I've witnessed some unethical people trying to use fear to profit, and this was not the case in my story. I'm grateful to my mom who told me who to call, and to the 2 Ghostbusters who came and acted as a spiritual bouncer for me. I live in Russia, and I've had lots of times in school when I or my mother would hear our names called by our voices, or the sound of the door opening and closing and no one actually entering the house. Sometimes the door, which was metal and very heavy, was even locked, but still we would hear the sound of it opening up and closing. None of that really struck me as dangerous or even spooky enough, unlike the things I started experiencing in my college dorm. For starters, in my sophomore year, I learned that there was a girl who lived in our dorm room about 5 to 10 years ago who hung herself in the toilet. I was always wondering why the toilet's room's ceiling looked so weird, so learning this explanation didn't surprise me, but still creeped me out a little. She apparently took a noose, tied it to the lamp in a toilet room, climbed on the toilet and hung herself. But why? It seems so elaborate and unnecessary. However, that's not the first story I heard about someone unaliving themselves and ending it this way. When we moved in, we started noticing weird things. Things would go missing without any reason until the owner would loudly announce, "This was my thing and I really want it back, give it back to me." Then the thing would magically appear in the spot the owner already looked at. Once I had a break between classes, so I went back to the dorm and found out that apparently someone left the electric stove on. I was pissed. The stove was older than me. Who knows what could have happened if I didn't come home and notice it. I asked around, and no one left it on. I wrote it off as people not wanting to take the blame, but still felt uneasy. This was only the beginning of it. Later, the most jarring thing I've ever been a witness to started to unravel. There was one time when I was at the dorm kitchen. In the same block of rooms I lived in, we had our own bathroom and toilet too. In my country, having your own kitchen and shower makes a really fancy dorm. I was cooking something. Finally, I really needed to charge my phone, so I went to my room to grab my charger and to go back to cooking. My friend and roommate as well was lying on her bed and seemed really pissed at me for no reason. I shrugged it off because at the time we didn't really get along well, so it was nothing out of the particular. I went back to the kitchen, looked at the hallway, and saw that same friend walking out of the toilet. I went, "What the hell? Are you a Flash or something?" How did you get in there so fast and I didn't notice you behind me? She said, I don't know, I was there the entire time. But how did you get there and made all this food while you were literally in our room charging your phone chilling on the bed like 3 minutes ago? I told her no way I was there. I've been cooking for almost an hour already. She told me that apparently I never left the room and was really mad at her for no reason. Again, because she asked me something and I gave her the most sinister glare one could and remained silent. We just stood there staring at each other, scared shitless, because we saw each other in 2 different places at the same time. We never figured out how it happened, because there was no chance for it to happen. Neither she nor I could be at the different places at the same time. Also, we both seemed pissed at each other, while there was really nothing to be mad about. I didn't participate in the other instance myself, but my other friend did. She went to her male friend's apartment and stayed there overnight. She had a strange dream about how she woke up in the morning and was preparing to leave for classes. Her friend was taking a really long shower and his phone wouldn't stop ringing, so she decided to pick up the call. The number was unknown, so she answered, and on the other end she heard her own voice, asking to speak to her friend that was the owner of the phone. She said no, and who's asking? Then again, her own voice told her, it's me, Nadia. My friend's name is Nadia. She woke up and shrugged this dream off. Then on her way to classes, her phone started ringing. She picked up without looking, thinking it was that male friend. Once again, she heard her voice again asking for the male friend. Her own voice answered, sounding slightly confused, no, it's not. Who is this? Again, her voice answered, it's me, Nadia. She then realized it was the exact same conversation that she had in her dream. She threw the phone away and started crying. She then found her phone, but there were no incoming calls since last evening. This story still gives me chills. Slightly more mild stuff was happening when I was alone at the dorm. Almost everyone left home for holidays and my dorm block was empty. It was just me in 2 rooms. I noticed that every time I left the kitchen and turned the light off, it would turn on again. I didn't really put much weight on it. The dorm is old after all. One time I was locked out of my room after I left to go take a piss. Luckily I had my keys hanging in the front door lock so I could unlock my room and get inside. After I got inside, I got locked in my room from the outside. Again, the dorm is empty. I'm the only one here. I was literally looking at the lock and how it was turning and locking me inside. Once I got up at night again to take a piss. I was half asleep. I tried to open the toilet room's door, but it was locked from the inside and the light was on. I shrugged it off and decided I would just wait until morning. As I laid back in my bed, I was filled with pure horror because I was the only one in the dorm. Who the hell was in the toilet? I ran back and the light was still on, but the door was unlocked. There were also small things like the sound of footsteps going back and forth in the kitchen, and someone's voice, like someone was talking on the phone sitting on the kitchen window. I lived at the very top floor, so no above neighbors, and my whole floor was empty. Everyone left. I eventually stopped paying attention to it and just left the ghost girl to her devices. After I stopped paying attention to her, she too stopped locking me in my room. She never stopped occupying the toilet and bathroom though. We were also friends with boys who too had a ghost in their room and who told us about the girl who unalived herself in our room. Apparently they were experiencing the same thing, aside from people being in 2 places at the same time and the phone incident. Doors in their rooms would open and shut, lights turning on and off, things going mysteriously missing, voices and footsteps. They named their ghost guy Boris. Our girl went unnamed. In our senior year, we decided to do this thing with playing cards. You take a stack of cards and announce that you want to talk with the keeper of this place. You ask questions that can be answered with yes or no. Yes is a red card, no is a black one. We just had a new roommate, and no one really liked the girl. We asked if the keeper liked the girl. The answer was no. We also asked if they could do something to make her move out as soon as possible, and the answer was yes. I never really put much thought into it, but now that I remembered it, the girl moved out within the next month because she brought some troubles upon herself. The police were called to our dorm and she was forced to move out not to cause more problems. I wonder if it was connected in some way. It's been almost 3 years, and I've never experienced something like that after I moved out of that dorm. Sometimes I wonder, was it really a ghost or a play of our imaginations? Is the phone thing and the girl unaliving herself in our room somehow connected, or was it two different instances? How and why did things go missing all the time, only appearing after being asked about? Was the keeper and the ghost girl the same entity? It was really frightening, and I don't actually hope to find an explanation as to what it was. It just happened, and we all moved on. It's hard to share this story. Honestly, even just talking about it makes me uncomfortable, as I feel I'm summoning it. For some background info, I've had sleep paralysis since I was a child. Usually it involves a shadowy figure with a very heavy presence. It sucks. I was 10 years old, just moved to America. All we could afford was this very small house directly across a cemetery. This may have had nothing to do with it, but it certainly didn't help calm my 10-year-old self. My grandma always gifted me these porcelain dolls. You know the ones. They need a stand to hold them straight and they're creepy looking with glassy eyes. I had a shelf in my room which was in the basement where I kept this doll collection. They always creeped me out, but since they were gifts, I kept them. One time my grandma brought me this extremely creepy doll. All the other dolls had some coloring in their faces, blush cheeks. This one didn't. She wore a deep red velvety dress, had extremely pale skin, and glossy, dead-looking blue eyes with straight blonde hair and bangs that were a little too short. She freaked me out. Soon after, I started having extreme sleep paralysis. Prior to this, my experiences were tame and just involved seeing a shadowy figure. Now, I started hearing loud manic laughter, mocking me, telling me that my family couldn't hear me and I couldn't yell for help. Coming from a religious country, I immediately started praying loudly in my mind and yelling in my head that I believed in God. Now, I'm really not that religious. I don't go to church, but I did go to Catholic school for a few years. In this situation, this is all I could think of to scream. This kept reoccurring multiple times a week, to the point I learned to sleep with my television on, sometimes with all the lights as well. That would allow me to know the passage of time during the paralysis and whether I was awake or not. The more I write, the more I'm realizing how absolutely insane this all sounds, but I swear it's 100% true. I would tell my mom, and thankfully she would empathize with me and let me sleep in her bed, even though I was between 10 to 12 years old during this time. The climax was one day during the daylight after school. I went downstairs and the feeling of dread that usually came right before I had sleep paralysis came over me. Except this time I was fully awake, and it was daylight. I went downstairs and I heard laughter. It's important I mention that every time I had sleep paralysis, it was this damn doll that I would see reveal itself to me during the ordeal. I went to my room to find a sticker of an angel ripped in half. It was previously pasted to my bed frame. I ran upstairs, and from there I couldn't go to the basement alone. I had to either ask my brother to come with me or someone else. We moved my bed upstairs, and I shared a room with my mom. Thankfully, after a few years, we moved to a better house a few blocks away. My aunt was helping us move. She has really good intuition. She dreams about people's pregnancies and whatnot. So we never really mentioned what I went through with her. It was something that we kept in that house. She stayed behind doing general cleaning while everyone was at the new house unpacking. When my mom came back to pick up more stuff, my aunt asked her if she had felt or seen anything in the house. My mom asked why. My aunt casually said, "Well, I asked because when I was cleaning alone, I saw a small child going around the house." My mom was taken aback, as obviously she knew what I had been claiming, and I even told her I felt that it was a young person. That doll did not come with us to the next house. I do still have occasional sleep paralysis, but since I've had them so much, I know all the warning signs and can usually get myself out of it. The laughter never came again though. This is probably the creepiest, most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me. I used to work overnight as a security guard at the local port. Usually none of the port workers would stay overnight except for the safety official. I wouldn't be on the shift alone since the site has a radius of nearly 2 miles. Overnight there would usually be 3 guards, including me. Since the area was fairly big, there were different posts, but front gate was the main entrance area, where all of the guards would be stationed overnight since there was no need to put them in another post, due to the fact that there was no activity in the site at this time. The veteran guards that have been there for years would often say that the site was haunted, given the fact that there have been accidents and deaths that occurred in the area a long time ago. I was aware that people died there due to freak accidents, and I do believe in angels and demons since I'm actually a religious person. But I always thought that the superiors were just messing with the new guys. I would work 5 to 6 nights out of the week, and for the first few weeks, I never really saw or heard anything out of the ordinary, except for maybe a few questionable creaks, and would see a few misplaced objects while doing my patrol rounds, but nothing too crazy. Just to describe the setting to you, this is a fairly big site, and on occasions when there were big projects being constructed at the port, the workers would sometimes stay overnight. Due to the fact that there were times where port workers were required to stay at the port for a few days, there's a gym in the site for their convenience. The gym is fairly old. There's a sauna, weights, and even a racquetball court. If you don't know what a racquetball court is, it's similar to an indoor tennis court with thin plastered walls and thick glass doors. Usually on our patrol rounds, me and one of the other guards, Mike, would stop by the gym and play a few rounds of racquetball before returning back to the front gate. On one of those nights, me and Mike decided to hit a full workout instead of playing racquetball in the cage. This was around 2:30 a.m., and the entire building is so quiet you can hear the electricity running through the lights. The air conditioner is off and so is everything else. The only thing that's running are the lights. 15 to 20 minutes into the workout, we hear a loud thump. We crossed it off as nothing and continued working out. Then after a few more minutes, we heard the loud thump once more. At first, we thought it was our lieutenant, which could have been walking around, but then we radioed him and he gave us his location, which was the front gate. We tried thinking logically on what could be making those thumps on the wall. They were coming from the court on the other side. We thought it was the air conditioner, but then we remembered that it was off, and even when it switched on during the day, there's no reports of thumps coming from the air conditioner. After a few more minutes, the thumps started occurring one right after another. We were very creeped out at this point, but what we were about to witness still scares the absolute shit out of me to this day. We started to approach the other side of the gym to where the glass door was. We turned on the flashlight and aimed it towards the clear glass door. I got chills all over my body, and I started tearing up so much out of fear that I was about to cry. We saw one of the balls rolling slowly by itself inside the court. There was no one in there. So that means the loud thumps were the balls mysteriously being tossed against the wall, as if someone or something was playing inside the cage. We were both so confused and frightened to how this was really happening. We couldn't make any sense of it. We were scared shitless and started yelling and running away because we knew that there was probably something evil toying with us. As we sprinted full speed back to the front gate, the lieutenant saw us and asked us why we were crying and running in a ridiculous manner. We told him what we witnessed and his facial expression scared us even more. He then said, "That's why there's always guards that quit often. There's something evil in the area, and it's not the first time that something bad has happened here." He then showed us security footage of dark figures and shadows literally passing through the office areas and lights mysteriously switching on and off. To this day, I still get chills recounting my experience with my friends and family, and I'm even getting chills right now as I'm typing this. I had never had a real encounter with the supernatural until that night. Many say that it was a demonic presence messing around. Others say it was a ghost of a dead person who died in the area. I don't know what it was, but I didn't last long on the job after that.